Thanks for being here. So I'm curious, I guess I forgot. Before we start off, I do want to say Happy Memorial Day to everybody, honoring the service people that gave their lives while they were serving our country, and also the families of those that were left behind. So Happy Memorial Day, however that applies, and we truly have a debt of gratitude, as they say, all gave some and some gave all. So this is our time to remember them. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Okay. All right, so we're going from good to great to grand, the power of vision. I'm curious, as a show of hands, do we have any Star Trek fans in the house? Woo, all right, there's a few. Excellent. Good to see some hands. The reason I bring that up is because we talk about self-actualization as a societal level. I don't know if there's a better vision of that than what Star Trek provided us. What an amazing world. And when I think about it, I remembered there was one episode of The Next Generation that really stuck with me. I'm going to do my best to relate this to you. There was a pod floating in space somewhere that they found, and there was 3 people cryogenically frozen from Earth in the late 1900s, and so they revived them, and they were kind of fascinated. They had been asleep for over 300 years, and one of them was just fascinated by the replicator machine. Anything you want. You want a 5-course meal, you want any artifact, anything that you can imagine, we can replicate it. And his first thing that he wanted to replicate was a dirty martini with 2 olives. All this technology, that's what he wanted. And then there was another scene where there was a person. This was a very affluent person, and he's in his room, and Picard comes in, and he's like, I'm the captain. And he's like, great, maybe we can get to the bottom of something then. And he says, Picard's like, yeah, you need to stay off of those comp boards. Stay off that computer. That's only for official business. And he's like, the guy's like, well, if it's so important, why isn't there some sort of like a security key? He's like, well, we're on a spaceship, and we can pretty much trust everybody to, have some discipline and stay where they're supposed to be. The guy didn't quite understand that. And so he turns around to leave, and the guy's like, hold on. And Picard's like, man, I'm in the middle of something. Like, we're in a situation, and it could be dangerous. And the guy's like, I'm sure you believe that, but let me tell you, my situation is far more critical. And, Picard's like, well, why? And the guy's like, I'm a very important man. I've got a lot of money. I'm very wealthy, and I need to get a hold of my lawyer. And Picard's like, well, your lawyer's been dead for centuries. And he says, well, I know that. But he was a full partner in a very important law firm. I can assure you. They are still there and still functioning and taking care of my assets. And Picard thinks for a second. He's like, a lot has happened in the last 300 years. We no longer have this obsession with acquiring things. And the man says something to the effect of, he's like, no, you don't get it. It wasn't about the things. It was about the power. And Picard says, power to do what? He says, well, to control my life, control my destiny. And Picard then says, what does he say? How does he say it? That type of control is an illusion. Does anybody really have control? And so it kind of sets in. And then a little while later in the episode, they're talking about what they're going to do. They're going to get these 3 people to Earth and go, 24th century, go live on Earth. And the guy says, what am I going to do? My money's gone. I don't have an office anymore. How am I going to live? And he says, those needs, we have all that taken care of. You don't need to do anything. And the guy's like, well, where's the challenge in that? And he said, well, the challenge is to better yourself, enrich yourself, and have fun, enjoy it. What a self-actualized society, and what a vision that Gene Roddenberry set in motion a long time ago. One other aspect of the show that was kind of important was the other person in the 3 pods, or in the pod, was a woman, and when she came out, she realized how much time had passed, and she spent all this money, and she realized, like, her children and her grandchildren were long gone. And that was like her whole reason for doing this, is to try to extend her life so she could get more of that family, and realizes that by doing that, she missed it all. So, looking at life and creating visions, there's kind of two different philosophies moving forward. There's people that are like very gung-ho and have, want to see the world change, want to see it always grow and enrich, and, how wonders can we make this? And then there's other people who are kind of a more conservative approach of, things are okay right now. If we change, we don't know exactly what's going to happen of that, and that could be dangerous. So we have two aspects, and they actually work together right now in our continuous evolution. It's been working okay so that we don't progress too quickly, and that we also don't digress, or I don't know if that's the right word, regress, I guess. And so I'm not saying one is better than the other, but I will tell you, I fall in the camp of looking forward and saying, what can we do? Like, things are pretty good. How can we make it even better? How can we make it better for more and more people? Because there's a lot of people that things aren't working very good for. There's some that it's working very well for, and they don't want to change a thing. And then those that are like, don't miss us. We're still down here, and things are not great. And so I fall in that camp of like, let's ask and see what we can do to change. And the reason I fall in that camp is because change is inevitable. So no matter if we try to resist it and try to hold back, it's going to change regardless. That's the nature of nature. It's always changing, always in flux. And what I have come to realize at times in my life when I have had something telling me it's time to change, something's not working in your life, you need to make a change. When I don't listen and don't take that change, nature changes it for me. And in those instances, usually it's not very fun. It's those challenging moments that like something gets to that place where it's bad enough that now I will change, even though I'm resistant. So I like to think forward and just imagine, like, how can we create that shift? So if you watched my teaser this week, you would know that I talked about there's a lot of people that do good things, good deeds all the time, and that brightens the world in so many ways, and those little things add up to big things. And then there's people that are doing great things, that do, organize groups of people to do these good deeds and these good acts. And then there's people that do the grand things, visionaries. And I mentioned John F. Kennedy when he said, we will put a man on the moon by the end of this decade. Or Martin Luther King Jr., his I Have a Dream speech. And I was trying to think of, as I was working on the talk, who's a woman? I know there's women visionaries too. Who's a woman that's done something? And one of them that came to me was Lucille Ball, who, hilarious comedian, wondrous show. She changed the way we do TV. First, so many firsts appeared on I Love Lucy show. And it was one that, just to get the show there, she had to really advocate for herself. But there's, first with the studio audience, first show like that showed, a pregnant mother, all these different things. But it was more than that, too, because she also was the first CEO of a studio, of a, production company. Just amazing things. First one then to own it. After her and Desi Arnaz divorced, she bought him out. She was the first woman to own it. But then as I was like, okay, so what else did she do? I had completely forgot something that I'd heard, 5 years ago or so. She was a big part, if not the part, of why Star Trek exists in the first place. Her production company produced the original Star Treks. There was one pilot, visionary, you know what I'm saying? There was, the original pilot from Star Trek bombed. But she believed in Gene Roddenberry, she believed in the vision, and everybody, even at her own company, said, we're not touching it, we're not taking it, it's not going to do anything. She pulled money out of her own pocket and said, we're doing a pilot. And then she stayed with it against the wishes of her board for over a year and a half, losing money all that time, but she never gave up that vision. And she ended up having to, at some point, get bought out of it right before, it was like around the 2-year mark where Star Trek took off. Because it was also one of her first was on I Love Lucy was the idea of reruns because of the way that they filmed it on actual film. So they invented the rerun. And with Star Trek, right around the 2-year mark is when syndication happened, and all of a sudden it's available in 60 different countries. She knew it was going to be something. And that's the kind of vision that can really pull us forward. So when we talk about self-actualization, we reference Maslow, Abraham Maslow, quite frequently. And so for anybody that's not familiar, like the base level of our needs is our food and water and air and all these things. And then we move up into safety, where we have our home, our job, these kind of things, our health. Then love and belonging is our social interactions, our families. And then up from there is esteem, and this is where we feel respect for others, we accept respect for ourselves, we do respect ourselves. And then in the self-actualization, which I've talked about all month, that it is, for human beings, self-actualization means reaching your highest potential as a human being. So this week, we're talking about reaching that self-actualization as a society. But one of the kind of fallacies that is repeated often is the idea that you can't go above your level. People, say well, you can't have esteem, respect if you don't have a job and you don't have this. But is that true? You can have respect. You can respect others. You can respect yourself. You can have love and belonging while not knowing where your next meal's coming from. And self-actualization, striving to reach your highest potential in any given moment. Self-actualization is not a permanent thing. You can have moments of self-actualization, but it's something that we have to kind of break the old stereotypes of this model. You can pursue self-actualization anytime. And what I want to say is when that's your target, those other things can fall into place. In the Bible, it talks about seek first the kingdom of God, and everything else will be given unto you. It's that same idea. So when we talk about self-actualizing as a society, when we create that vision of what could be, and we take steps, we hold that vision, we hold it in our frequency, we talk about it, we are planting those seeds. And by doing that, these other needs of every people in society whose needs aren't being met, we will discover and create those ways for those to fall into place. But it does require vision. So with that, envisioning the ideas of Star Trek or whatever you envision for yourself for what the future would look like, a quote from Norman Vincent Peale, he said, "Aim for the moon, and even if you miss, you'll land among the stars." Yeah. Seek first that kingdom within, and everything else is going to be okay when we stay in that alignment of who we are. And when we can inspire each other to seek, and what can we do as a society to create and be in this space, everything else will begin to fall in place. We've been doing this, like I say, change is inevitable. And if you look back over human history, we've come a long, long ways. And I am convinced that we are on the verge of a revolutionary time where things are going to drastically shift for the better. We talk about, a shift in consciousness, and how's it going to come about? I tell a story of, there was a moment back in 2020 when I was on my way to work, and I realized in my mind, when we talk a lot in Centers for Spiritual Living about creating a world that works for everyone. And in my mind, I realized, I was doing spiritual mind treatment while I'm driving, and something about that idea came up, about a world that works for everyone. And I realized, and what I'd heard lots of other people say all the time, is that we are creating that, but it's not going to happen in our lifetime. And I was like, why not? And I realized I was holding to that same thing too. And in that moment, for me, something shifted. I was like, why not? I want to see it in my lifetime because I want to know that my children aren't going to have to go through the 2x4 to the head of our collective society. I'd rather be here with them if that's the way that it's got to go. And I also recognize it doesn't have to go that way. Ernest Holmes talked about that as well, that there will be a time when we consciously evolve without the need for suffering to be the motivation. Michael Bernard Beckwith, it's his saying is, we are pushed by pain until we're pulled by vision. And that's what we got to be planting is these seeds. Now, the idea of vision, there's something within each and every one of us. We all have desires and urges. There's something in us that speaks to us that the universe wants us to bring into our collective experience. So that vision, it comes to us from within. And then it's our job to follow that vision and feed back into it. So Ernest Holmes, a quote from Creative Living, he says, "There is an irresistible potential pressing against everyone for self-expression." Who are you? Who are you? We are all children of that infinite thing, of that divine, and we're all here to share that light. But so many of us in that way of not standing out, we stifle it. We stifle others' lights when it makes us feel uncomfortable. So part of this vision is to open up and share who you are. Allow others space to share who they are. And through that, that's how, one by one, the lights go off until pretty soon, humanity is shining the brightest light that it is. And as I've talked all month long about, like that self-actualization, it's not an end destination. So people that have achieved it, societies that have achieved it, they get there, and all that does is open up the vista, the view, the next horizon. But to an outsider, like when we look at that Star Trek, we can look at that society and say self-actualized. But they're in it. And so for them, it's normal, and their vision is far beyond anything that we can imagine. And they're out there in the universe, taking care of business, exploring, helping people. Like, what a time. And so, our spiritual principle for the week that I found that I think aligns with this. This comes from a document called We Believe. And this is Ernest Holmes. And he says, "We believe that the universal spirit, which is God, operates through a universal mind, which is the law of God, and that we are surrounded by this creative mind which receives the direct impress of our thoughts and acts upon it." That's that vision that's within us. You feel it. When you're inspired by what's within you, you can feel it and sense it. And we feed back into it. It's this perfect, give and take is how the universe works. And so to self-actualize our society, listening to that voice, going within as often and as frequently as we can, and just holding that space of, creating this world that really works for everyone. Now, our spiritual practice, I love it because it lines up perfectly with Malika and I. We didn't talk or anything, and she starts doing the meditation, and she's like, we don't talk enough about visualization and visualizing things. I was like, perfect. That's great that's what she's talking about. Because the spiritual practice that I wanted to do today, not do, but to offer you for the week, of course, visioning is right there, which is another Michael Beckwith technology, spiritual technology. But what came to me for this idea of of the power of vision is we've heard a lot today about spiritual mind treatment. We call it spiritual mind treatment or affirmative prayer. It's a method that Ernest Holmes developed to hit certain elements to make prayer more effective. And it lines up, one of my favorite people that talks about prayer is a medical doctor named Larry Dossey. And he has seen enough, and he's looked at different studies on prayer, and he's convinced that prayer is effective, and it does affect people in the medical world, so much so that he considers it medical malpractice to not pray each day. He goes into his office, closes the blinds, and prays for the first part of the day. And then he goes about his day because he is that convinced of the power of prayer. And that's where we are with spiritual mind treatment. We feel that strongly about it. That's why, this next class that's coming up, if you would like to learn the method of spiritual mind treatment, I highly recommend it. But one part that goes often with it that I forget myself, so this is my reminder to me, is combining spiritual mind treatment with visualization. So visualization is imagining in your head what it is that you would like to see, what it is that you would like the outcome of the prayer to be. So as we do spiritual mind treatment, holding in that image of within of what that looks like. When I was driving in my car and I had that realization that I was at a place where I didn't really believe that I could see that change in my lifetime, and it shifted. In my head, this whole vision opened up that I saw. The first thing I saw was soldiers lying down their weapons and picking up baskets of food and becoming peace emissaries. People, borders dissolving, and people standing, holding together, holding hands together. That energy of love with a capital L, melding and creating a beautiful new world. And I tell that story with a little bit of a joke because that was my last, or maybe the second to last shift at that steakhouse that I was working at right before it shut down at the middle of March 2020 for COVID. And so I make the joke, if I'm going to see a world change like this in my life, something drastic is going to have to happen. And then I was like, whoops, I guess I did. Whoops. But really, it's a collective effort, so I can't take all the blame for it. But stuff will shift. And again, it's that give and take, and it comes and it goes, but we are, without a doubt, we are moving forward into something new. I love this prospects of right now with AI and automation, we could really start to create a world where more and more people are free to pursue what it is that they feel in their heart. We just have to make some shifts of how we're going to take care of everybody on the way. But we've got the resources, we've got the possibilities, and we've got the vision. So then our affirmation for the week is, I commit to Spirit's highest vision for my life while committing to Spirit's highest vision for all life. So join me on this affirmation if you're in alignment with it. Say, I commit to Spirit's highest vision for my life while committing to Spirit's highest vision for all life. Yeah. And then the last thing that I want to finish with here, this comes from Stephen R. Covey, and he says, be patient with yourself. Again, this is my message to me. Self-growth is tender. It's holy ground. There's no greater investment. So we are here. This is holy ground. And wherever you are, when you are in this space of thinking about things that are bigger than just little me, that there's a bigger energy in this universe, that we are part of it, you are on holy ground. And that is how we create the vision and then bring the vision into our collective reality. So with that, I invite you just to relax and take this within, recognizing that there is something in this universe much bigger than any one of us. But it is actually all of us. That this force, whatever you want to call it, the source of all creation, the inspiration of all creation, one infinite presence, Great Spirit, or God, whatever works for you, the words are too small to describe the thing that it is. And I know that each and every individual of that is a direct manifestation of it, here to create Spirit's grandest idea for where we are to certainly arrive as our continual spiral of expansion and expression. So I invite us all to tap into that feeling, that sense of something bigger, and allow the imagination to open up and bring any ideas. What does a world that works for everyone look like for you? How can that tie in with other people's vision? What is possible when we open up into higher inspired ideas where everyone's needs are met, where everyone is sacred and valued, where everyone's own unique expression is celebrated for the diversity of ideas and thought that it brings. So I know that right now, in the mind of spirit, this vision is already laid out, that there is a future that is unfolding and developing as I speak, that more and more people are waking up to the inspiration within. Problems are being turned into solutions. Anger, hate, and fear are being turned into love, compassion, and kindness. And the ideas and inventions and technologies that are right around the corner are inspired from the deepest mind of all that is. So with these words, I affirm and avow that each and every person has that divine light inside, that little voice that whispers behind the mind that is leading each and every one into their highest self-expression, reaching out, creating space for others to share their highest self-expression, coming together, great minds to create a shift in consciousness and a new way of being on this planet. Where peace and harmony are the norm. So going forward, I know that this light surrounds each and every person that hears these words, bringing protection, comfort, inspiration, and guidance. And that as each one of us shines our light, that light ripples out and connects with others, creating more and more pockets of light around this globe. And that it is truly a beautiful thing. So with gratitude for it all, gratitude for everybody who's standing on their holy ground, visioning for this new future, holding space in heart, I say thank you. And I say thank you to a spirit that takes our words, our ideas, implants our words and ideas for us, and just creates this back and forth that is unfolding and has been unfolding for eons and will always continue to do so. Thank you for that all. And now I just release these words into the creative mechanism of the universe, knowing that as I do, it's already done in the mind of God, and it is our joy to grow and enrich and experience it together as we affirm by saying, and so it is. So it is. So thank you. Thank you, everybody.